5:00 p.m., January 17th, 2023. Call to order the Oconee County Council special meeting. A moment of silence, please. Mr. Root?
Yes, sir. Pray with me if you'd like to. Dear Father, thank you for the opportunity this evening to come together and receive important information. Help us to have clarity in receiving the information and clarity to the presenters and giving it for these essential infrastructure purposes. Just pray that your vision, your will would be done, and that this would be your meeting, and that you'd guide us. In your Son's name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Ms. Park, will you lead us to the pledge?
Yes, sir. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Today we have a presentation to council about the Fair Play Basin Study, presentation discussion of Weston and Sampson. Please give us your name, please.
I'm Kip Gearhart with Weston and Sampson, Regional Manager.
I'm Catherine Amadon with Bolton and Mink, Environmental Planner.
Well, I just want to say thank you all very much, council members and audience. Thank you all for being here. We've been working on this project, and we're really excited to kind of go over some of our findings. So without further ado, we're going to be going over the Fair Play Basin, and this is way more than Fair Play. This basin is 64 square miles, so it's very significant. So want to talk about our members. This is Catherine Amadon, again, with Bolton and Mink. I'm Kip Gearhart. I'm the project manager. We have Bryn Dudley here. She's with Weston and Sampson. And then on the screen, Danny Gant has also been involved. And there's been many other folks with our firm who have been involved in this project. So thanks a bunch. So want to just talk about the purpose of this project, okay? And this is a very important project. In 2021, OJRSA issued an RFQ for the study of this basin. The goal of the overall basin was to have a planning document to get planners involved to really make sure that we incorporated the planning aspects of the project. Community involvement, and Catherine's going to talk a lot to that. But from there, we would apply the engineering side and develop a sewer plan that goes with that. Along with the sewer plan, we're going to have revenue projections that show what it's going to cost from a capital cost and a revenue cost, and do this in 5-year increments. And the overall goal is to have a clear path for sewering the basin. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Catherine, and she's going to talk about some of the planning components.
Thank you. So I led the planning portion of the study, which kind of was the beginning portion of this work. I wanted to first start with the study area. The original RFQ actually requested a smaller area more focused on the village of Fair Play and did not include any area in Anderson County. After the first stakeholder meeting, it became really clear that we needed to expand this study area to include more of a holistic basin approach, which includes the peninsula that goes down into, I guess this doesn't work, oh, there we go, that goes down into Anderson County. And then we also wanted to include a buffer around Highway 24, which meets up with Highway 11. So we got West Oak High School, all of Highway 11, and then pretty much 85 starting in the state of South Carolina going just past exit 11. So that's the study area that we proceeded forward with after the first stakeholder meeting. So some accomplished tasks, I'll just kind of run through this high level. We did a lot of research and data analysis that included looking at census data that was available, projections for growth that the state has provided, and also just researching previous studies that have been done by other engineering firms within this area in previous years, as well as looking at your comprehensive plan and other planning documents that existed. We did 3 in-person stakeholder meetings. We involved Oconee County, Anderson County, economic development groups from both sides. We had some environmental groups, including Lake Hartwell Partners for Clean Water. We included Appalachian Council of Governments and also Pioneer Water, and of course, Oconee Joint Regional Sewer Authority. And all of those were held at Oconee Joint Regional Sewer Authority. We also held one public meeting where we advertised and invited the public to come hear a presentation on the progress of the project and to provide input. We provided an in-person survey that people could fill out on paper in the moment, as well as an exercise where we had 2 maps. We asked people to put dots where they wanted to see development and sewer occur and areas where they did not, and that could get incorporated with our feedback that we received from the survey. We also created a website to provide some information for folks that were unable to attend the meeting in person, and had the same exact survey that we had available on paper for those attending in person available online. And that was up for about 5 weeks on Oconee Joint Regional Sewer Authority's website, so people had the opportunity to take that. In total, we ended up with 141 people taking that survey. I prepared a draft planning report, which actually is going to get sent later today after this meeting to Oconee County, to Amanda, and also Oconee Joint Regional Sewer Authority to Chris, to review and provide feedback. And then pending is the draft engineering report, which will kind of encompass the work that I've done and all of the work that Weston and Sampson has done. And then here we are today having this presentation to you. So I just want to quickly run through at a high level some of the things that we considered when we looked into the planning portion of this project. So one of the things that we like to look at is constraints to development. So we don't want to be planning sewer where it's not going to happen. So we looked at certain constraints being areas that are wetlands, 100-year floodplain, land that's already been protected, either under a conservation easement or some other form of land protection. Also looking at steep slopes. All of those are areas that will likely not be developed. This map is a lot, and so I can invite questions about that later. The one other little piece that we did look at, which is not a constraint to development, but something to consider, is prime farmland soils. You have a lot of really good prime farmland soils here in the county, and so due to agritourism being important, and also there's already some existing agricultural land uses here, that's just something to consider when we look at growing sewer and maybe protecting some of that land for agriculture, and I'll get into that in a second. Other things that we looked at, we considered some population data. So this is from the census, and we specifically chose not to really look at trends that happened prior to 2010 because it would bias the data into thinking growth isn't happening as rapidly. We all know the upstate of South Carolina is booming right now, and so I really wanted to concentrate on data that's more recent. So within this specific study area, which had 3 census tracts in 2010, we did have 1 census tract that got split into 2 for the 2020, but this is the same land area. So from this 10-year time period, which I just want to make sure we know this 10-year because we're going to talk about 5-year breaks in a minute, this area grew at 9.2%. So we know it's growing, we know there's people coming. I also looked at data that's available at the state level at the South Carolina Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office, just to kind of get a gut check of what's really happening more at the county and state level. So they look forward, which is really helpful. So we've got 2010 and 2015 estimates, and then they project all the way to 2035. So just to give you kind of an idea of how the state is expected to grow, about 35% within that 25-year time frame. Oconee County and Anderson County are both expected to grow at a slightly slower rate at 22% and 25%. So why does all that matter? So what I was tasked to do is to think about how this area is going to grow to help inform the engineering portion of the project. And so I looked at 4 different growth projection models to kind of get a feel for where we were going to head. So the first model that I looked at is what I'm calling the gradual model, which actually ends up being the model that grows the least. And that essentially is just saying, you know, we're going to kind of continue business as usual, and I looked at the Oconee County and Anderson County percentages that the state had projected and basically ramped up population in the more recent 5-year trends and then kind of ramped it back down. So just to like kind of back up real quick, these numbers, 2020, these are real numbers that we have from the census tract, and then I had to project out 2022, which is the year this plan starts, and then 5-year increments, so that's kind of explains these dots. Linear is just a regular linear regression model, so that's another more conservative approach looking at where growth can go. And then we wanted to capture maybe a more aggressive model for a couple of reasons. One is we heard a lot of if you build it, they will come. So if there was more sewer, this area would have the opportunity to grow faster. And then also we wanted to capture what happens if there's some sort of catalyst project that lands in this study area at Golden Corners. Is that going to really change the population here, and how can we kind of capture that? So we did two a little bit more aggressive models. The 4.6 projection, so think back to that 9.2% is how fast this area grew between 2010 and 2020. So half of that is 4.6. So this just assumes 4.6 growth every 5-year increment. And then 6.4 is the rate at which the state is expected to grow. So this model, this blue one, is much more aggressive and really goes beyond what has been projected for this area, but it would be inclusive of a catalyst project should that occur. I did want to make a quick note here to just say that we had put out this invitation for the public meeting, and I know that it was highly advertised within the Oconee region of this project. I will say I'm not entirely certain we really captured the opinion of folks that are living in Census Tract 109. And that was the result of the stakeholders sharing or not sharing the information. So that's just something to know.
Catherine, could you please let them know where track number 109 is?
Yeah. So track number 109 is Anderson County. So the boundary's right about here. So this is Census Tract 109 in Anderson County.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just a couple more slides, and then I'm going to pass it over to Kip. I did want to just point out that we did look at your current zoning and your future land use. Both of those can be really helpful in informing where growth is expected to go. The current zoning, I will just note for you, is highly unzoned and control-free. So we had to make a lot of assumptions based on the feedback we got from stakeholders and from the public about where they wanted growth to go, because your current zoning map doesn't fully inform that process, because everywhere that's in this light-colored, kind of pale white is unzoned. Similarly, your future land use map, which is where you're projected to go for future land use, is mostly related to agriculture. So this section in Anderson County, you can see the green is flagged for agricultural use, and then this whole section in Oconee County is flagged for agricultural preservation. So again, not overly informing of the sewer development process, and so thus this project really heavily relied on stakeholder input and public input to help figure out where growth should go. So next steps were...
Next steps, okay. Thank you, Catherine.
Yes,
And
you're
I can't say enough about the planning effort. When we started this project, there was a big emphasis on we have to make sure that the community is involved. We have to do the research. We want to know what the community says. And Catherine, as you mentioned, where do they want sewer to go and not go? So all of that played a significant part in what we'll now do as part of the engineering. So what did we do, Weston and Sampson, the engineering component? This is the next steps, and these have been completed. So the first thing that we did is we took the sewer flows, we projected the sewer flows from the population. So, and Catherine talked a lot about that. Next thing that we did is once we have the sewer flows, we're able to size the infrastructure. And the infrastructure in this case is the pump stations, the force mains, the gravity mains. From there, we also did kind of a capacity confirmation. We want to make sure that the pipes are sized adequately to handle both current and future projections. And then from there, the other key component was to do some analysis on what is the revenue going to be that's going to be generated from the wastewater facilities, and what is the O&M cost going to be? And then from there, we'll combine all of that into a final report. Population projections, the actual sewer infrastructure, and then the revenue that's going to be required to operate and maintain the system. And we're working on the final report now, but the first 4 there have been completed, okay? Okay, so this is the same slide. I want to throw this back up real quick. So this is the population projections, and the reason I'm showing this is this is for the whole study area. So what we did, Catherine also showed this slide, is so that we had to take the population projection and basically assimilate it to the overall basin. And we did that using the census data that Catherine talked about, which is very significant and very important. So from there, then we're able to begin to do the sewer flows, okay? So we did the sewer flows through projections for each of the areas. And then we get to this map, and there's some things I want to talk about here. So basically, this map shows the black lines that you're looking at on here are drainage basins, okay? So all of these shapes here are drainage areas. Generally, the area, this tan area, and it's probably better on your screen than it is here. This tan area up here is high, and generally everything flows from this high point basically southeast towards the lake, okay, is the general flow of elevation, so from high to low. And then from on the low end, you see these fingers, okay, and there's these basically drainage canals and creek basins that project themselves northwest up into the basin. Okay, and this is going to be important, you know, as we look at the sewer plant, because obviously we try to use as much as gravity as we can to minimize pump stations. Just some other notes that are on this map. The Conroe Creek wastewater treatment plant is right up here. Of course, Golden Corner is right here with the force main that goes up to the plant. West Oak High School, we're going to talk about that later in the presentation. And then there's the I-85 corridor. And I just want to talk about that for just a minute. Catherine mentioned the stakeholder meetings, and I can't say enough, there was a lot of great discussion. Mr. Hart was at some of these meetings, and it was great dialogue basically with the stakeholders on what's going on in this basin, you know, relative to development and where sewer is and is not going to be. I do want to say this. From the conversations in the stakeholders meeting, it was generally agreed upon that everything is kind of starts generally, not everything, but primarily along the I-85 corridor, okay? And you're going to see that from what we're getting ready to show. Some of the red dots that are on here is exit 1, 2, 3. And we know that Sewer South is a proposed project, and a lot of what we're going to talk about is going to be connecting to the Sewer South project. Okay. A couple of more assumptions before we get into the design. So the flow projections were based on the 50% of the present population connecting to the system, and 100% of the future growth connecting to the system. So we think that these are conservative, and again, these were the numbers that we used, the flow numbers, to calculate the size of the infrastructure, the pipe sizes, gravity line diameters, pump stations, and force mains, and the like. The revenue projections that we're going to show towards the end of the presentation are all based on $2022, so they're based on today's dollars. Relative to who is going to connect, we made the assumption that 50% of the businesses and residences that are within 300 feet of the proposed infrastructure will connect, 50%. The future growth, 100% will. And the reason that that number is so high is we really believe that significant growth in the future will come with where sewer is going to be, okay? All right. Okay, so this is our first scenario, is scenario one, which is our 0 to 5 year plan, okay? And I would like to couch this pretty much as low-hanging fruit, you know? So we talked about, Catherine actually mentioned, build it and they will come. And some of that we think it really is true as it relates to Sewer South. Where the infrastructure is, it makes it easy to connect to that, to extend and expand from, okay? Let me go to the next slide. This is again, as a general overview of the 0 to 5 year plan. And let me go to this slide. So this slide is more focused in, or more zoomed in, if you will. So here's exit 1, 2, and and 4, excuse me. And the proposed projects that we have here is we have at exit 2, we have 2 pump stations that are located down towards the lake with gravity lines that will extend from the pump stations up to I-85, okay? We have, this is Longshore Drive right here, and that whole road is going to receive gravity lines. The force mains will basically pump from there over to the pump station that's exit 2 and on up to Golden Corner and on to the wastewater treatment facility. It should be, the area that is in green is the area that can be readily served by the proposed infrastructure. The purple area is area that can be served, but there will have to be an extension, okay? So what we're showing basically on these concept plans is basically the backbone, if you will, of the proposed sewer facility. And there'll be more extensions that will be made off of the backbone of the sewer facility, ultimately to serve the whole area. Over here at exit 4, we have another pump station that we're proposing with gravity lines again that are going to extend up to I-85. Particularly here to note is, as we all know, that Love's is at exit 4, and they're on an existing small package plant. If they were to have problems, this infrastructure would be able to take that facility offline, and we would be able to bring it into this system. So again, over here at exit 4, the area that is in green can be readily served by the proposed infrastructure. The purple area can be served by an extension, okay? But all of this will connect to the proposed Sewer South project up to Golden Corner and then on to Conroe wastewater treatment plant. These proposed improvements, exit 2 is approximately $4.2 million and exit 4 is $4 million. And these pipeline sizes are generally what I classify as small. Gravity lines are 8 and 10 inch, pump stations are less than 500 gallons a minute, and force mains are 6 in the 8 inch range. So we think that this would be very viable work that would happen in the first 5 years of this plan. Okay, 5 to 10 year plan. And this is the most significant thing that we would like to talk about on this plan, is the Beaver Dam, the proposed Beaver Dam Creek wastewater treatment plant. So noteworthy here, this is located basically in the bottom quarter of the overall basin, okay? And is located near, if not on, the Oconee-Anderson County line, okay? And this will be what we believe will be the catalyst for the sewer expansion and basically the treatment for the sewer expansion to sewer the basin, okay? The proposed facility that we would propose would be a 1.5 MGD facility that would be designed so that it could be expanded to 3 MGD, okay?
Kip,
Yes,
Million gallons per day.
thank you. MGD is million gallons per day.
Thank you.
No problem, thank you.
It's not a language everybody speaks on a daily basis.
No problem. So, again, we think this geographic location is very strategic to the overall basin. Here's a blown-up view, if you will. And let me jump over here to exit 1. So over here at exit 1, we're proposed a pump station on the south side of I-85 that would serve area over here, and it would pump over, it would be on the north side of I-85 and pump to the south side of I-85 to exit 1 and then into the sewer south system and on out. Basically a small project, but it would cover an area that's currently not served. The bigger next phase project is up at exit 11, okay, where we would install a pump station here. Again, we would have multiple gravity lines that would extend up into the basin towards I-85 and across 85. And all of this area in green would be served by this pump station and gravity system and ultimately pumped over here to the new wastewater treatment facility. These projects, the project over here at exit 1, again, I would classify as a smaller project, a smaller lines, if you will, again, in the range of 8 to 10 pump stations, less than 500 gallons a minute. Over here, this is bigger infrastructure. And we're going to see, because ultimately we're going to expand this system as it goes up this creek bed. So these lines over here, pump station is probably in the 800 to 1,500 gallon a minute range. For future expansion, gravity systems are probably 12 to 15 inches in diameter. Force mains are 8 to 10 inches in diameter, okay? So again, this would be another significant area that's served, and it would go back to the proposed Beaver Dam Creek wastewater treatment facility. So down here, let's just talk about the numbers real quick. Beaver Dam Creek, 29.4 MGD would be the initial capital cost ultimately for the 3 MGD facility. Exit 11 improvements, we're estimating at 8.4 million. Exit 1 improvements, 1.2 million. Okay?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
The identification of that Beaver Dam Creek Way Station, why is that property identified?
Yeah, so excellent question. Generally, it's identified because of the topography, if you will. So what we're trying to do is maximize gravity flow and minimize what we have to pump. So in general terms, if we went back to, let me just go back to this slide right here. In general terms, everything is high up here and it's flowing down here this direction. So what we're doing is we're actually, this location right here where we're proposing is right along this creek bed, which basically bisects the whole basin. So it's in a low area, okay? So it helps facilitate gravity flow.
So is it a specific property that you've identified that would be purchased, or did y'all just choose it as?
Yeah, we generally just chose that geographic area. We have not actually chosen a specific parcel yet.
Okay.
Okay.
There was about a 400-acre tract there that I just wondered, because it's, looks like it's identified as that tract. That's why I was
Yeah,
that specific.
yeah, we haven't gotten that granular yet on a specific parcel, but generally.
It's just close.
Yeah, yeah, and again, so this is, we've got our engineer glasses on, we're really laser focused on the engineering, so. All right, let me just speed back up here. That's an excellent question, though. Thank you for asking. So this is the 5 to 10 year plan. So let's jump to the 10 to 15 year plan. So again, now what we're doing, the Beaver Dam Creek wastewater treatment plant is here, big circle, and we're extending the gravity main system up this gravity branch, this storm drainage branch, or right up here, all the way up to Highway 11. Again, what is in basically green can be served right off the gravity system. What is in purple can be extended. So this is a large gravity extension. It's basically shown in two sections. The lower, what we're calling the lower Mill Creek sewer, is from here up to Golden Corner Pump Station. We would actually take Golden Corner Pump Station offline at that time with this gravity line, and it would flow to the wastewater treatment facility. That would minimize O&M costs so that we wouldn't have to maintain that facility. Those dollars would now go to the wastewater treatment plant and be maintained there. And then the upper Mill Creek, we would extend basically from Golden Corner up to 11, Highway 11. This is noteworthy. Here's Chickasaw area, which is currently on a package plant. If at such time in the future that plant wears out or needs to be taken offline, we could put a pump station here and pump up to the gravity system and take this offline. Again, those are ifs. Not saying that they're having trouble, but that feasibility and possibility is there. And I guess in general terms, a lot of times when these small package plants get wore out, it's a significant investment to put back into them, and then you have to do it again in 30 years, and then you have to do it again in 30 years. At some point, it's great to take them offline and bring them into what we call basically a centralized system. Okay? Relative to these costs, $5.5 million for the upper section of the gravity main extension, $6.5 for the lower, and then it would be a $4 million project to pump this Chickasaw up and into the system. Okay? So this, again, is the 10 to 15-year plan. Okay, 15 to 20 years. The only thing that changes here is a project that we're calling, which is the West Oak High School, and it's the similar situation that I just described. It would be a gravity that would connect here to the wastewater treatment plant, package plant that's there, and we could take that package plant online and it would flow by gravity over to existing gravity lines that are up here that are already in place. So this project could actually happen tomorrow if the school was having problems with their treatment facility, and instead of, again, reinvesting in that, we could actually have a project here that would take it offline. We estimate that project to be $3.3 million, okay? But that, again, not saying that they are, but it would make provisions to do that. Okay, here is what we're calling the 20-year and beyond plan, okay? So, we've already talked about all of this, except what we did is we added some significant gravity main extensions. If you remember at exit 11, we made this station down here a little bit bigger so that we could extend gravity line on up these creek basins so that we would have significant expansion of the gravity system by gravity. I would note that any of these areas that are over here in gray could easily be pumped over Highway 24 into this gravity system. Likewise, we extended another gravity system from Beaver Dam Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant up this creek bed, up Beaver Dam Creek. So again, all of this area is being served. What is in green would be served directly from the infrastructure. What's in purple would be served from an extension. I will note, the gray area doesn't mean that it can't be served. It simply is not in the 20-year window, okay? So this is, again, we've got other areas that can be served by extending these sewer lines and expansion further up into the basin. They're just not, because they're not shown on this graphic, because we're not, I guess right now, we don't think they're in the 20-year planning window, okay? Okay. This is a scenario, another scenario that we threw in. Instead of putting a wastewater treatment plant here, we put a pump station here, okay? And this would pump back over to the Golden Corner, and then up to Conroe Wastewater Treatment Plant. Let me, okay, so let me get to some dollar values. All right, so from a capital expenditure standpoint, scenario one, which includes the wastewater treatment facility, total cost over the 20-year period would be $66.9 million. And over here, you see the timetable. So the 0 to 5 years is pretty light. The biggest lift here is the 5 to 10 year period, design period, which includes the wastewater treatment facility. And then the 10 to 15 years, another big extension, and then the 15 to 20 is a little bit light. But overall, the 20-year period is $66.9 million. Again, scenario one includes the wastewater treatment plant. Scenario two is $48.1 million total. And the reason that it's less is because we're not doing the wastewater treatment plant as part of that scenario. However, I would note that what is not included in that is we would have to upgrade Conroe's wastewater treatment plant in order to serve this basin. So it looks like a big delta here, but if we added in that cost, it would not be as great. Okay? So these are just capital dollars, and again, these are in today's dollars. This is the O&M cost that we projected for the project. So this is what it would cost us on over the period of the 20 years to operate and maintain. And here are some key elements that went into this O&M cost. $325K a year to operate the plant, $18,000 for pump stations, and here are some other, significant manpower, staffing, gravity line, inspections, trucks, vehicles. And I would say that we got these numbers working closely with Oconee Joint and also for some O&M budgets, okay? So here is where this plays into. So we did some revenue cost. So these are basically revenue, annual revenue that's going to be generated from the facilities over time. We did this in what we called, I guess I'll start here with the 3% of the median household income, which is basically a high sewer rate, more of a cost-neutral sewer rate, and then the average rate, which is based on an upstate average. And what you see is a different payback period, ranging anywhere from probably 12 to 13 years to about 18 years.
Kip, can I interrupt you?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm really sorry. I
Yeah.
just want to be clear. The revenues collected here are user revenues and not tax revenues.
Thank you.
So typically, we only collect tax revenues, and when we use the word revenue, it's sort of understood in this environment that it is a tax revenue. I want to make sure that y'all understand that's a sewer revenue. That has
Right.
nothing to do with the tax base.
So it's a sewer bill.
Thank you.
It's a sewer bill. You get a water bill in the mail, you get a sewer bill in the mail. Thank you. That's. The other one that's noteworthy over here is basically the cumulative revenue over O&M cost. And basically, there's a payback period here, cost neutral, which is the median sewer fee that people would pay every month. But the payback period is 20 years, which is very reasonable. Okay, so just to summarize this real quick. In fact, I'm going to instead of going to the next slide, I'm going to use this slide right here, because I'm going to talk quickly, because I want to give Catherine an opportunity. This is basically the deliverable for the project right here. We have a sewer master plan for the basin that's in 5-year increments that can be basically tracked. And let me just say this. This could move, it's in 5-year increments, but as Catherine mentioned this before, if a big industry came in or a big user come in, you could accelerate this thing forward easily 5 years, okay? But at the end of the day, our final report is going to be a master plan in 5-year increments that provides a clear path to how to sewer the basin. And again, I just want to note, these gray areas will be served, they're just not in the 20-year window. All right, so let me go back real quick. And we've been over these, and this is Catherine.
And this is our closing slide.
This is our,
So, to Kip's point, this plan is only gonna be great if you revisit it. And so we, especially as a planner, but engineers feel the same way.
Yeah.
Anything that we do, if you just stick it on a shelf and don't look at it again, it's not gonna serve you at all. So we recommend at a minimum revisiting this plan every 3 years. Or if a catalyst project were to land in this study area, that would garner a revisit. We would also recommend keeping the positive momentum going through a facilitated conversation with the stakeholders that have been involved up to this point. I would recommend that that group gets together at least twice a year to continue this conversation about sewer and where it should go and what's going on. The conversation that we had at those stakeholder meetings was really positive, and I think really moved the needle on getting everybody to have some dialogue on this topic. Second, we would recommend that you revisit your zoning and future land use as is required by your comprehensive plan, so whenever that next comes around. When you look at that and you consider your current zoning and your future land use, have in mind tying it back to sewer. Coney County specifically has a lot of goals articulated in their comprehensive plan that directly speak to sewer, and so I would encourage going back to those goals and tying your zoning and land use to sewer growth and where you want it to go. Through the survey, we had a lot of really interesting comments of people feeling really strongly about septic staying and septic being better for the environment. And I had equal amount of comments for people saying sewer is way better for the environment. And so I think that provides an opportunity to partner with both the counties, maybe U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Lake Hartwell Partners for Clean Water on a public education campaign to just explain the pros and cons of septic and sewer and where it makes more sense to have each of those applications to deal with sewer. Because I think people are just really unsure as to where that application is better. So just an idea for a public education campaign. And then we're obviously, by putting a sewer plant kind of right on that county line, it's gonna be really important that there's collaboration between Anderson and Oconee County, and then Appalachian County of Governments would also have to be involved as the designated planning agency, which is, that's due to the Clean Water Act, Section 208. They are the planning agency, so they have to kind of approve that collaboration. But if you guys were to embark on that, we would recommend kind of pulling out of this study area, looking county-wide and including that census tract 109 that's at the bottom corner of the basin. We got a lot of comments about how growth is happening near Seneca with Clemson, and kind of having a bigger picture overview of this study would be really helpful. And last but not least, the planning recommendation I'll hit on in this talk today is to revisit current sewer regulations for both Oconee and Anderson County. So again, if you were to embark on a collaborative wastewater treatment plant between the counties, it'd be really helpful if the regulations were identical or at least very similar between the two counties. Currently, they're pretty different. That's articulated in my report, and you can read more details on that, but it would be good to have that be transparent so that people who are within that sewer basin experience the same regulations, and it's really clear what happens to grandfathered uses as well as new uses. So that would be one other recommendation we would have. And with that, we are at time, and we'll go to questions.
Awesome.
We got time for questions if anyone has questions on council.
It's a lot of
Yeah,
information.
I got a question. Let's give an opportunity for questions. The, attendance at the stakeholder meetings, you know what the average attendance was? Those, like how many people?
The stakeholder meetings were like invitation based on those entities that I mentioned, so we were approximately about like 20-ish people. And then the public meeting had about 35 people in person,
And then how many surveys do you think that you had total?
141.
Okay. And are those available for us to view as well?
Yes, as an attachment to my report, I've got the raw data that I'm gonna just provide directly to Amanda and Chris so that they have it, but then I've also summarized that in kind of an attachment to complement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with revenue projections, you're, talking about a way to, I guess, pay for the system, you would assume that as a household member, you know, going from septic, where you have whatever the cost is to standard septic, going to a cost, we don't have a cost estimate of what it would cost a standard homeowner to tie into there.
We don't, because the regulations are different per county, but if you were to take an example, within Oconee County, the regulation right now is if there's sewer available within 300 feet of your property line, not the structure itself, but the property line, then you are required to connect except if you get a waiver or an exception from the wastewater director. So it's really dependent on how far that is for you. Is your property line 30 feet from your house, or is it 290 and you're like gonna have to go much further? So it's very case by case, but I don't know if you wanna add on to that, Kevin.
Yeah, you're correct, it's within the 300-foot basin. I think our understanding of the way this would go is if you have a good septic tank, that's the reason we use 50%. If you have a failing septic tank, I think the way this is going to work is that DHEC may not renew a permit for if an existing septic tank is failing, they may not renew that permit if sewer is within 300 feet of their property.
So do we have an ordinance, or is that through the Joint Regional Sewer Authority? They have an ordinance that if there's a sewer line within 300 feet?
You do.
That's a sewer regulation, yes, sir, that's our
So-
county ordinance.
You know, and I know this is y'all's study, and y'all did a good job, so I'm not.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So, you know, we talk a lot about what we're charging our people in taxes, and that we're trying to make sure that we're, you know, watching out for those, but here we are stating that if we go forward with this plan, you would literally be forcing people because of an ordinance to tie into, a sewer system that would cost, I don't know, let's say it's $30, $40 a month, I don't know what it would cost. I guess it's on flow. And so a person that's incurring a zero cost based on whatever their septic system is, would incur a cost to tie into here. So, and, you know, this is my whole thing with any kind of sewer project, there's unknown cost, and that's what we're discovering, that's what this discovers as well. So I just wanted to, you know, throw that out there, that, it's a cost that a homeowner's not incurring, that would be. And honestly, with most sewer that I've been in favor of running on here, it's been for industrial development, economic development. And that is, you know, paid for whatever that cost associated with it. You know, having a homeowner tied on there, especially, in those areas, who has to pay the cost? Who has to pay the 300 feet to tie into the system? Who normally pays that?
Normally the homeowner does.
Normally the homeowner.
That's right, but there are grants out there, and there are financing options that are available so that it doesn't have to be incurred all at once.
And I understand, yeah.
Yeah, and I would note, I would say that the areas within the basin that we're talking about are along the I-85 corridor. Now, there are residences along there, but a lot of that will, especially at the exits, will be commercial, type developments. So it won't, some of those, so I guess it won't be all residential, that will be connecting to it. That would be fostering the economic development through the exits, and those that would be connecting at the exits.
My hope would be is that any kind of sewer expansion, the majority of it is in a commercial development. Because it's expensive. I mean, just to tie into a system is, we're talking excessive amount of money. So if you're talking about home building on a specific portion that I've got to tie, if we're just thinking out loud. Again, this is not an attack on the study or anything like that.
Sure.
Y'all did a good job. But if I'm buying a piece of land out there and I've got to now incur a cost to tie into the sewer line. What is that cost? Because that's a cost that if I go down the road into Oakway where I live, and I'm on a septic, I don't incur. So, you know, it's kind of those things that, you know, when we're making decisions, there's a lot of unknowns that we discover as we're going through the study of what are these costs?
Yeah.
Who's incurring these costs? Because now we've discovered that if we move forward with this, a lot of this costs, we're gonna put a burden on a property owner. That in all honesty, I didn't really know there was something out there like that. And again, it's Joint Regional Sewer Authority, but it's out there for a reason.
Well, and Anderson has a similar but different regulation too, which is why it would be so critical to go ahead and embark on looking at those regulations again and being really clear about grandfathered uses if you were to embark on a big
Right.
project like
And,
this.
and you have to, in a way, I hate to use the word force, but, you know, you have to, otherwise, a normal person wouldn't spend that money tying into it,
Yeah.
because their septic system's working fine, they're not incurring a cost. So, you know, I'm not a big fan of forcing somebody to do something, but if you're trying to pay for a system,
Right.
you're gonna have to have people on it.
Yeah.
So, you know.
And I think that would apply to new construction too. I mean, I think if it's new, and I think that's the reason we use the 100% rule for future, in that if it's new construction, they can plan for those connections and it can be worked into the overall cost of either a residence or a business. You know, I think that there is room for those that are on existing septic tanks. Again, I'll go back. If their septic tank is failing, I don't think DHEC is gonna give them a new permit if sewer's there, so that they would connect. But I would say this, I think that there's also some folks out there that would welcome, if, you know, that have been on a septic tank and would welcome connecting if their septic tank is not performing well. Because I think we do have
And
some.
we had comments on both sides, for
Right,
sure.
we have right, so there is, I mean, folks that are in poor soils or in high water tables close to the lake also have problems with their septic tanks, so,
Right.
yeah, it's a balance.
Which is your larger development areas
Yeah.
as well, so.
I think there's exceptions to each one of the rules that you're speaking of, and the gentleman that can tell you about it is sitting right there, because he had a person that was wanting a new septic tank put in at a new house, and he had 100 acres, and the sewer line passed through that 100 acres. I went out and tied in the sewer line, projected 300 feet to each side. The man's house that he was building was well out of the 300 feet. He got a septic tank.
Okay,
Sure.
thank you, Mr. Hall.
Any other questions?
Probably because he didn't want to incur the cost of tying into a sewer line.
If not, thank you, you've done a great job, and we appreciate your study.
Thank y'all very much, we
Thanks for your
appreciate
time.
it.
Let's see, we'll start the regular meeting in, 10 minutes after 6? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion.
All in favor?
Aye.